Okay. Oh, okay. So are we back? How long have we been off? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I actually having read this, I think the book, at least not completely in execution because it is pulpy schlock, and to be honest, the original Jaws is slightly pulpy schlock. It's about a giant shark attack. What are you expecting?
Yeah.
But in that one, it's interesting because it is very much about the kind of almost PTSD of the first one, which they refer to as the Trouble. There's a lot of kind of mafia subplots in there where essentially one of the characters gets the photograph of the shark
What-
that has been taken.
Are there
and is
loan
trying to hide
sharks involved?
Possibly there is a casino. But it's interesting in that the shark attacks go on, and there's kind of no evidence for it being a shark. He thinks it might be, but he kind of takes his anger out on somebody else that's kind of a policeman from out of town, but has connections with kind of mafia, essentially bosses that have investment in the area and lawyers and stuff like that. So a lot of it is, it's a different type of Brody being overworked and kind of running down, and a lot of pressures around his job and keeping that. So it's a lot more of a personal thing, and almost, I mean, the first one, at least in the book, I have seen the film, but I can't remember if this is specifically in it. I've read the book more recently. Was there a extramarital affair subplot in the film?
No, they didn't have that in the film. No.
Yeah,
Oh,
because in
the shark
book,
having sex with his wife. Yes.
you'd think it's I tell you what, that is pretty much like if Danger 5 did Jaws, that's what it would be. I'm prepared to see that. I think there is a shark character in it. Anyway, yeah, in the book, the kind of marine biologist guy has a kind of affair with Ellen. I think it's him, at least. And so there's a way to kind of read the shark as kind of a rage or kind of repression of these kind of feelings in that. And so there are almost two sharks in a way. And Jaws 2, you can kind of read it the same way, that the shark is a representation of his stress building up and his life kind of possibly collapsing around him with the job and everything like that. And so it's a slightly different way of doing it. You still get the shark attacks over a while. It keeps cutting back every sort of 10, 20 pages to a POV of the shark, as it did in the first one. This is the book, this is. And it's
What are those parts like? Is it just the third-person narrator?
I had no idea the Jaws book included the POV shots. That's
No,
amazing.
it's like so the first one is like he swam through the water, he heard
That's
threatening,
about all they do.
so the first one is the great fish moves silently through the water, propelled by short sweeps of his tail, that kind of thing.
How long
and
are
then
those
it's like-
sections? Because what do sharks do besides swim and hear?
It's sort of maybe a page or two, and it'll intercut, and it'll
Just keep
intercut
swimming.
it.
Just keep swimming.
That is so
I know, right?
silly.
There's a reason why. This is the thing. Like Jaws is not like a great work. In the nicest way, it's not a great work of literature. It's a popcorn muncher of a horror kind of adventure novel.
Well, it's in a similar manner to how Mario Puzo's Godfather, was like an airport read turned into like a masterpiece by Coppola,
It's
The POV of the
cranked out.
pasta.
It's stuff cranked out to collect a paycheck and pay the bills and put food on the table for your kids. Like this is what people don't understand about Shakespeare. He was writing to make a buck. But yeah, so it's because of that, Brody doesn't see the shark until right at the very end, even though shark stuff is going on and it will all add up as, oh, it's not this guy who he thinks is actually responsible for it. And he's off his rocker, this policeman from out of town that's just drunk the entire time. It's actually another shark, and he discovers that right at the end, and that gives a very slight difference in the formula. The trouble is the book is adapted from an early draft of the screenplay. Obviously, in developing the film, they went, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to make this Jaws again, and it's pretty much exactly the same formula, which means that when nobody's refusing to close down the beaches because Brody's going, there's a shark here. Remember what happened last time when there was a shark and you didn't close it down?
Remember Jaws 1?
Yeah. well, this is Jaws 2, and there's a shark there, and it's like, no, it's fine. Don't you dare close it down. This photograph of a shark could be anything. You know, you're fired from a job. Like, it's just pointless and stupid. And
That is so lazy.
yeah. And the thing is, they're like, oh, the first one did well. Let's just remake the second one. I mean, it's not like The Strangers would do anything recently like that, is it? No, not at all. That's besides the point.
I mean, I do love how the offhand way they dismiss like the idea that Richard Dreyfuss didn't want to come back for this. They should have one dialogue. Well, you know, really of Hooper's help. Oh yeah, he's uncontactable. Yeah, he's on an Arctic expedition at the moment.
Does a guy show up and he's like, so he's at the back of the room, scrapes his fingernails across the chalkboard. Y'all remember literally 2 years ago when there was a shark here? Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. Fun fact, I just remembered I saw a film many years ago that was made for about $7,000 called Lake Michigan Monster, which replicates that scene where a guy shows up at the back and does something similar, and then he goes like, yeah, there's a monster here. And it's like, how big is it? Imagine a lion. Now imagine a tiger. It's as big as a lion. It's completely stupid. That's like the greatest joke in it. He does the whole thing. Lake Michigan Monster is interesting. It goes a bit weird near the end. They like swim through aquamarine tunnels to fight like a sea goddess from out of nowhere. I can't remember what happens. It's mad. But that one joke, imagine a lion. Now imagine like a giraffe or something. It's as big as a lion. So great. I wish something like that was in Jaws 2, because it's not. It's not done awfully. And actually, John Williams came back to score it, and that's probably the best part of the film.
Paycheck.
And Roy Scheider's still kind of charming in it. You know, he's still a good lead.
No, apparently
he does
had...
what he can.
Yeah.
He had a bad time filming, but it doesn't really come across. He's still, you know, he's still compelling. I think, kind of, does his best on the material he's given.
The main issue with this movie is that it is just, as much as they can, pretty much a carbon copy of Jaws 1.
Yeah.
So what did they do instead of the USS Indianapolis speech?
They have
because they don't really have a Quint character. They don't really have that moment of kind of pathos. Really, it's
wow. Yeah. So they weren't that lazy. They went out of their way to not completely copy it.
I suppose they give Ellen Brody a slightly more to do in Jaws 2 as well. So
that's because there's no Quint character, so they need to use her.
And it's nice that it essentially ends with both parents out, you know, trying to rescue the kids. You know,
the DEI hire.
And I will give it one credit over the book in the way that they kill the shark.
Yeah.
Sorry. So they kill a shark. Surprisingly enough, spoilers for Jaws 2. It chews through like a power cable that's giving power to the lighthouse up on the cliff. Because obviously we need a way to electrocute a shark.
Yeah. They literally get it to lunge up and kind of put the cable in its mouth.
Yeah. And in the film, they do mention it early on in the film, and then it comes back in the book.
Chekhov's power cable.
Yeah. As far as I know, in the book, like, I had no notion of it until literally it's mentioned that the shark is just chewing through a power cable. I think it tries to go for something and accidentally bites it. There was no plan of this involved at all, and so at least the film tries to set this up, I think. It's not the worst movie ever. There's bits, there's moments, you know. Roy Scheider's good in it. John Williams is good in it. Scoring it.
How is Susan French as elderly woman?
Yeah, I'm sure.
One of the best elderly women I've ever seen in a film.
I was gonna say Betty White from Lake Placid, Eat Your Heart Out.
There's also Diane Hetfield, the ski boat driver. That is a credit.
Yeah, and that is literally the shot of the poster is of her skiing and then water skiing on the boat and then the shark behind her. Unfortunately, the shark does not rise out of the thing, a bit like on the cover on the poster. It's not that good. But yeah, it's like it's too similar to the first one and not trying to do anything. At least the third one, but how absolutely awful it is, at least tried to go, let's at least have a different setting. It's not good, Jaws 3D, but at least try to have a different setting.
I would say no one needs to see Jaws 3D, even out of morbid curiosity.
No.
If you want to go for one of the Jaws sequels, go for Jaws: The Revenge. At least that's bad in entertaining ways. That's a fun watch.
Yeah, and paid for Michael Caine's mother's house.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, Michael Caine does an interview where he goes, somebody talked to me about Jaws 4, The Revenge, and said it's an awful movie. And he goes, I haven't seen the movie.
I've seen it, but I've seen the house it bought. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the house they bought my mother, and that's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's like they paid him $1 million for 2 weeks' work. It's like, yep,
Yeah.
you'd take it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, Jaws 2 is interesting cash in of the original. It's kind of the only film that's allowed to be a cash in of the original.
It's fine, isn't it? It's inoffensive. It kind of does its job, but it's not in any way memorable.
It's a shame the helicopter pilot doesn't get a name like Diane Hetfield, the ski boat driver. They really let him down.
How awful! It's atrocious. And actually, that's an interesting thing in that there's in the book there is a helicopter plot that comes into it. In that it's looking for stuff and it drops a big
into the shark.
No, it drops a big like metal ball. I can't even remember what the metal ball is. It's part of some apparatus that they're using for something, and that's one of the things that gets some of the people out there into the water. Because obviously the problem with a shark is that you need people to go into the water. Nobody goes into the water. There's no threat. You know, and it's just like, that's the end. So you kind of have to keep coming up with reasons to get people in the water. So there's a reward out. They've lost this kind of military equipment. And if anyone finds it, they get a certain amount of money back. So that gets a load of them out into the water to have shark attacks. And this military equipment, it was out looking for some people that have been taken by the shark earlier on. And it kind of dangles and goes into the water and the shark kind of rips it off. So in that way, there's a kind of like a chain of connection that's in it. And that was an interesting thing that I was kind of waiting for in the film, and it didn't turn up. I'm like, is that because you couldn't afford to get a helicopter to fly that low, or I don't know. That's although we shouldn't compare books, and that was based on an earlier draft. I think that one had enough differences and was kind of organic enough on its own. Whereas the film kind of leaned too heavily onto the original Jaws kind of setup and things like that. Anyway, that's Jaws 2. It's interesting, but you're unlike the first one, where you kind of do need to see it, even if you don't really care about it. You have to watch it just to tick it off if you're a film fan. Jaws 2 is not one of those. It really isn't. No. But you know what? If it comes on and you watch it, you're not going to claw your eyeballs out. Unlike Night of the Lepus, where you pretty much are.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess this is the one we will probably most highly recommend of these three.
Yes.
Razorback is the 1984 film about a wild boar, a gigantic wild boar, attacking people in rural Australia. It's awesome. I really enjoyed this movie. Yeah. I didn't expect to. And then, it was a lot higher quality than I thought going in.
I'd heard about it in passing, and it's always one of those ones where it's like, I'll get round to it at some point. If I see it on TV, I'll probably hit record or watch it like that. Yeah. Never actually intending to go out of my way to watch it, and then I watch it, I'm like, I should have watched this ages ago. This is actually good.
It's no exaggeration. I don't think everything works in it, but it is at very least one of the best looking creature feature monster movies I've ever seen. It just cinematography is incredible.
Yeah, the sort of genesis for this, I guess, goes all the way back to ancient humanity when we were drawing cave paintings of boars on the walls. It's something that has pervaded mythology from India to Ireland. Vishnu, he has a boar avatar that he turns into.
Fun fact, my home city, Bradford, has got a boar on its coat of arms. So.
Nice. I found out Richard III, he had the white boar as his heraldry. There's the story where Hercules has to go capture the whatever long word boar, and he does it in the film too. That's the beginning of the Zero to Hero montage. The first monster he fights is the boar. Yeah, I mean, boars are actually fascinating and mystifying to humans, and also scary. You know, in addition to being ecological nightmares, like I mentioned earlier, they can kill people, and they have. Not very many. It's just like hundreds over the course of like a century or so, but still, they can. The boar can gore.
I will give it a quick shout out to this novel by Graham Masterson called Flesh and Blood, which has a genetically engineered boar, which then goes out of control and kills people as one of its plots. It's an entertaining novel, if nothing else, and there's a load of weird Jewish mysticism in it, and another plot that kind of bring together. It's almost like two novels that you kind of combine to apex at one point. But yeah, there's a massive giant boar that eats and kills people, and it's Graham Masterson. It was written in the 90s, so it's proper splatter in parts as well. That's great.
That's another fascinating thing about boars, is that they're omnivorous. So, like, in theory, this thing could have been eating people in this movie too. Like,
I mean, I think it's widely believed that the mafia use boars as a way to dispose of bodies.
Hence Hannibal.
Yeah.
Yes, hence Hannibal.
Gary Oldman, literally, in that one. And then there's also the convergence of boars as a feature of human storytelling forever, with Australian-specific filmmaking, which we said we'll do New Zealand, we'll do Australia at some point too, but spoiler, a big thing of their cinema is the harsh colonial environment that they live in. Who would have thought? This movie takes place in the Australian frontier. It's very much like a Western, where there is the divide between the city, the natural human world, and then the wild Australian outback, where not only are the animals killer, but the humans are deranged as well. Even just the normal seeming ones are massive weirdos.
And then there's the ones that work at the slaughterhouse who are like extras from Mad Max.
Yeah. And so whenever you read about this on Wikipedia under the reception, it got mixed reviews from critics. Several compared it to Jaws. I mean, that's the laziest comparison you can make. This is nothing like Jaws. I mean, in a sense it is, because it's an animal on a rampage and you don't really see much of it, and it's animatronic. But the plot of it, there's a lot more of the human element to the fear. You know, it's more like the zombie movies, where it's the humans that are the real monsters, because of those Mad Max extras who are freakish looking. They are awesome actors in terms of acting like deranged weirdos. And then you have the two very boring Americans that are sort of the what do you call it? The protagonists.
I think they're called the international sales appeal.
Yeah. Isn't he supposed to be Canadian? Doesn't he correct someone at one point?
Yeah. Well, and then they say Canadians are basically American anyway, which is true. I don't know what the big... Unless you're from Quebec, you're pretty much American.
Well, they are American. They are from North America, the continent.
Yeah. So the start of the movie is, oh my God, it's heart-wrenching when the old man has his grandson taken away by a wild boar, and he goes out and screams on his knees with the fire raging behind him.
I was going to say that shot really goes, okay, this is going to be a nice looking movie, because you have like, it looks great.
The ball literally charges through his house and through the crib and takes the kid with it, and it's just I mean, so many shots in this, they look like they're like Hieronymus Bosch paintings or something like that from Fires of Hell or something.
Yeah, because there's these weird dream sequences throughout where he's they're Hieronymus Bosch and they're Salvador Dali. Like, he's dreaming about weird surrealistic wild boars, and it's so weird. There's also fun, like, cuts too, like the one where the oil derrick pops up to like there's a hatchet coming down or something, and then it cuts to that. This movie is way too well made for what it is. And they shot it with anamorphic lenses to get like the full range of the outback, the natural landscape. And also they were using a Panavision camera, just kind of top of the line. The guy who shot it shot The Road Warrior. So that's he got pulled off that. They were like, "Oh man, yeah, you made a really good movie. You're going to make this other Australian film." Although the book was written by an American who went on to create Judge Judy. So it's good that they brought in an Australian director to give some authenticity to the Australianness of the story.
I was going to say, and straight after this, the director, Dean Semler, went on, well, he came off Mad Max 2, and straight after this went on to do Thunderdome as well. He did... I'll tell you why he's also good. Because he also did a cinematography for Dances with Wolves and won the Oscar for it.
Yes. Yeah, that's the other thing he's known for.
Three Musketeers, Trojan War. Also, he did one of your favourite films, I will say, Jacob. He did Triple X.
Nice.
Admittedly, the first one.
I can see why they needed...
Bruce Almighty, Longest Yard, Apocalypto, like...
Yeah, at a certain point, he was just cashing out.
Yeah, then did The Last Witch Hunter. But yeah.
Big Vin Diesel fan.
City Slickers.
And then the other end of things, this director, Russell Mulcahy, went on to do Highlander. So, so there's some talented people involved, and you can't really track kind of the kinds of projects they sign up to. They obviously like variety.
Yeah. Well, after the old man, there's a fun little court scene where, like, it sort of establishes the contrast to the wild outback. There's the very posh Australian guys who are talking about the laws and trial stuff. And there's just kind of a lack of evidence, but nobody believes his Boar story. They are pretty sure that he killed his grandson. It's very true crime. It could be its own movie, I'm sure. That would be a lot more boring. But there's an American woman. It cuts to them for no reason. She is American. I guess her fiance is Canadian. And she is an animal rights activist. And she's going to go to Australia to make a documentary or special or something about kangaroo slaughter. So kangaroos are being killed to make dog food. Why do you need to kill kangaroos to make dog food? I don't know.
Which thank God they don't show, because if you look at what's it called?
Kangaroo Jack.
Wake and Fright, there's infamously a scene of like a kangaroo hunt using real kangaroos, and it's literally cinematographer went out with these guys at night who were hunting kangaroos, and you see actual kangaroos being shot, and it's horrible. Well,
there is a scene where, I'm sure it's a fake kangaroo, but there is a shooting, and then Jake has to kill it, or not Jake, the Canadian guy has to kill it, and he does that with a cleaver, and that's another great shot in the moonlight, but it's really like blurry and weird, and I think that's the cleaver coming down turns into the oil derrick, like it's so strange. He falls asleep on top of the kangaroo corpse, cuddling with it. And, like, he's not the animal rights activist. That's his wife. But she ends up being nearly raped by those weird Australian guys in a very uncomfortable scene. I'm glad it sort of stopped short. I thought the boar was going to save her, but no, the boar kills her. Because nature is indiscriminate. It doesn't care if you're good or bad. It just kills.
They do a Janet Leigh in Psycho, and like one of our leads, who we presumed we're going to be following for the whole film, kind of gets off about halfway through.
Yeah, there's our Janet Leigh coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pretty brutal scene. They had several different animatronic boars. This one was specifically designed to ram vehicles. So, and they also look really cool. But there's first-person shots of the boar goring her and destroying the car, and then she's never heard from again. The Canadian guy shows up because she went missing, but like there's no scene where he finds her dead body or anything. Goes to the boar's lair and finds her tied up like King Kong. No, she's just gone. She's done. Not in the movie anymore.
I mean, I suppose Australia must be one of those countries where probably the reports of missing people as opposed to people being reported dead is probably higher, because it's just everything's just so spread out and kind of remote. You know, if you get stuck out there, you've got no hope in hell, basically. You know,
Well, I remember.
Never mind you surviving, but you know, you probably have no hope in hell of anyone actually finding your body either.
Yeah, I remember Bill Bryson did a book called Down Under. It came out, I think, mid-90s, I think, or sometime in the 90s. And he was saying, you know, he did a tour around there because he's a travel writer, essentially. And he was talking to people, and you go, you know, out there at the outback. And the trouble was, before you had like satellite stuff like Google Earth taking maps of stuff, there were just entire, like, a good sort of half, 2/3 of Australia where they'd no idea what was there, because it's the size of a continent with about 10 million, you know, people living in it. And so it goes, so what actually is past kind of that area of land? And they just go, we don't know, have no idea. You know,
brown people.
Yeah. Well, Bill Bailey used to do a thing that kind of Nazi Germany could have set up a new Reich in their country in Australia, and nobody would have known until one bumbling copper just happened to stumble across it. You know.
Well,
like, all right.
to be fair, the British kind of did with the Aboriginal people.
Yeah. It's just like they just have no idea. So I think that is one thing, especially with Razorback, and I'm thinking also something like Wolf Creek, where you could just like do anything there and nobody would know, because it is the size of a continent with about now probably like 13-14 million people there, and that's it. You know, it's like you got people living there where it's like the nearest kind of big city is like 13-hour drive away.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
She talks about the place where they are. It's like Gamal or something, and they don't have telephones there. They have camels that drink Coke and horses that drink beer, and there are no laws. They have posses. There's a posse in this movie that goes to hunt the boar, and unfortunately doesn't find it. Carl, that's the Canadian guy's name. So the story that he hears is that she fell down a mine shaft, and he goes and he ends up meeting, because Jake, the old man, tells him to go find Benny and Dicko. Those are the deranged Mad Max extras. They are like, yeah, she fell down a mine shaft, and they sort of get him in on their kangaroo hunting scheme. And so he lives in their weird cannery, and he is doing work for them. Like, they have him sweep pig guts or shovel them, or I guess kangaroo guts. It's very strange, but they set up that, you can't turn on that valve because it's gonna blow up the factory.
Please stop. Please
no, I'm going to keep doing it. Nobody in Australia is listening to this. It's fine.
Yes, but I am. That's why I'm saying please stop.
No. And so they go out and they have the kangaroo kill scene, and they tell him, don't wander off. We'll be back. Well, what does he do? He wanders off. And he just wanders in a weird haze until he happens upon Sarah's farm. Sarah is Jake's pig partner. She's not an animal rights activist, but she has a nice pig farm where she's ethical, and she tags the pigs for a government grant. Yeah. And she very politely says, I don't agree with what your wife was saying, but, you know, her heart was in the right place. Which is such
Why am
a
I covering
strange...
my ears? I've got earphones in. That's pointless.
So strange to have her say she doesn't agree with stopping kangaroo butchery, but whatever. She's really nice about it. But she's going to help Carl find the giant boar. I don't know. This is the part where the movie gets a little boring-ish because it's just... Oh, but there are the intercut parts with that one dude who is in his house and the giant boar is terrorizing him and ends up pulling away his television at the corner of his house as he's watching it.
Yeah.
That part of the movie is completely pointless.
Yeah. So it's just happily just watching TV in the evening, and the boy gets tangled up in something outside his house and just runs off. And I mean, it is a great gag. It's like a Buster Keaton gag, isn't it? Like a whole half of a house just been pulled away.
Oh, I forgot. Actually, he does find the wedding ring in boar feces. I forgot about that part.
Actually, you're talking about that, and it has almost no relation. I'm thinking of the Rats again, James Herbert, and he would later do it in The Fog, where it's almost like a weird structure where you have one kind of main through line around one character that goes through, and then you almost have like a series of vignettes kind of around the incident that will eventually lead up to it. So other characters that are being affected by this that don't really come into the main plot, but kind of just expose you to the world that's going around. And this feels a little bit like that. Other people were doing it at the time. I also read another pulp novel called Slugs recently from '82, which is about mutated killer slugs, strangely enough. And that does something similar. So
yeah.
That kind of thing was happening at the time, so I'm wondering if there's a little bit of influence from kind of the pulp.
Yeah, just because it's a book, like, yeah, there were definitely little... I feel like the book's very Michael Crichton-y is kind of how I was picturing it, and it doesn't seem weird for a book to do that, but it's weird for a movie.
Yeah, because it is pretty much unrelated. I wonder if maybe a lot of it was for time, because strangely enough, I had this when watching it. Like, the movie is 91 minutes long, and it felt like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it feels longer.
Stuff. It was really weird, and I reckon like this. Like, I mean, we'll go on with the rest of the plot, but there's so much stuff in there, but it's ridiculously well paced as well. But it feels like a 2.5 hour kind of almost like Moby Dick style epic.
It's very intense, and obviously very kind of the visuals kind of almost clubbing you over the head. Very kind of you're kind of left reeling afterwards. It's very kind of intense kind of experience overall, isn't it? So
yeah, but it didn't feel like kind of it's just trying to jam everything in.
No,
it was a weird experience that the film felt longer than it actually was, but
if it like good. The weird, yeah, it was like the weird hallucination scenes. Maybe it's like a bad trip, and kind of like time moves a bit strangely, when you go through that kind of stuff.
It's wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, yeah.
And then eventually what happens after that kind of weird middle section, I mean, it's fine, and like you said, it's paced well overall, but the action gets going again when Sarah says, Jake knows what killed that lady. She doesn't say anything more specific than that, and so Benny and Dicko go, oh, they told on us, and so they're gonna go kill Jake, except they don't kill Jake. They just wound him and then kill all his dogs except for Spider the shepherd, and he says, Spider, go get Sarah, girl, bring her here. And then he gets killed by the boar, he crawls into a shack to drink water, and then also to disguise the boar, because you can't show too much of the monster, and so you
have like the shack door kind of blowing open and closed, so you get like flashes of it, but it's a nice little touch. That
budgetary reasons.
Yeah, and so his white whale kills him, and so now oh my god, I forgot. Benny and Dicko run over Spider, and that's they cut it in a way that you can't, like, for a second I was like, did they run over the dog? But they did. It's very good dog actor. He or she lays down, and so they go, oh, well, we got to get out to old Jake's place. It reminded me of the point where, Luke's family dies or something. Like, they're going to go back to not home. And, Jake is dead, and so now they're going to go get the posse together to kill the boar. The posse scene is fun because of that one guy who gets left behind and has to ride the coke-drinking camel. And they have all their Mad Max vehicles that gun-toting Australians are piling into. It felt straight out of something that would happen in Texas. It's not unlike that. But yeah, they another comedic scene. They pull up. They're gonna shoot this little pig. Oh, I think she thought that like the boar ate the pig that had the tracking device. I don't know how they ended up on that pig.
I think they were just in the area, and that was the first one they saw. And they were like, "Oh, this is in the area. It's a boar. It's obviously not this one. You're hallucinating. It's massive."
So they all just go home, and so Carl and Sarah, really just Carl, because Sarah doesn't show up until much later in the climax. But Carl goes to the cannery to finish off Benny and Dicko and Danny, I think is the other guy. And the scene where he kills the one in like the mine hills is pretty fun. He tortures him and he's kicking sand on him, and then he just leaves him for dead, and you know, like they did with his wife or whatever. And then
when I said I would kill you last, I lied.
And then he pushes another one into that spooky red fan, and yeah, I forget how the other one dies, but they all die, and so it's just him against the boar. And there's a lot of boar shots in this part because it's the climax, and he uses the factory to kill it. I thought he was just going to blow it up, but no, the boar falls into the spooky spinny fan, and he's swinging around on a corpse with the red light on him. And yeah, I mean, it really reminded me of the end of Empire Strikes Back with like all the industrial stuff. And I don't know why that's what came to mind.
I was thinking of the end of the first Terminator. I mean, it was just
I'll see it.
That too.
The use of the conveyor belt and everything.
No, Sam will get this. Jacob probably won't. I was thinking the end of Wallace and Gromit: Close Shave.
Oh yes.
Does somebody get chopped up at the end of that in a fan?
Yeah. The climax of Wallace and Gromit: Close Shave's in a dog food factory.
Oh, okay.
And the main evil dog turns out to be a robot.
Oh, thank goodness.
There are scenes on a conveyor belt running away from kind of minces and stuff like that, and he gets kind of chopped up into robot parts at the end.
Yeah. And then you have all these dog food cans being filled with like nuts and bolts and stuff.
And yeah, I mean the boar dies in the fan and not in an explosion. So I figured that would be like symbolizing we're blowing up this illegal hunting operation too, but no, it's still there. Somebody could still utilize it to abuse kangaroos for dog food. And yeah, I mean that's it. That's the end of the movie. The boar died. So I was hoping they would leave it ambiguous, but they did not. They were not making Razorback 2. Back to Razor Outback. To the Razorback. There's something.
I mean, a Razorback 2 I would kill for, and actually I don't go for remakes, but I'd love to see like a 2.5 hour like proper serious remake of this actually, because it did for me. It felt like a proper epic. It was all the stuff in there, and yet it still had moments that felt very kind of almost Texas Chainsaw Massacre again, with kind of the dust and the grit and the family as well. The kind of almost rape scene felt a little bit I Spit on Your Grave-ish. But there's also kind of there's the city and the rural kind of stuff that you've got going on when you had things like Deliverance, I Spit on Your Grave, and all the stuff that's going on around there that would be in Men, Women, and Chainsaws, that kind of stuff. So it is very much of the time, but it's got everything in there, and it's beautiful.
I mean, I get why kind of like Australian audiences and critics of the time might have thought like it maybe lends a bit too much on like cliches and stereotypes about some of these characters and everything, but it is like a kind of a heightened reality, so it kind of all goes with that. Really, it kind of all feels of a piece with it, even if it's possibly a little bit lazy with stereotyping at times.
Yeah, well,
and it's weird because the boar is therefore kind of again it's a nature fighting back, not only against It's kind of against all aspects of civilization. It doesn't pick on anyone in particular. It feels a bit like a slasher in that way. So it obviously attacks kind of the main kind of couples and that who come from New York, even though they're Canadian, which is your obvious in any slasher or this kind of urban rural kind of stuff. They'd just be everyone attacking them. But then it also goes after the people at the kind of the canning factory, who, yes, are kind of evil in some way, but they also work for a company that makes canned food. So they're part
Did
of
they
it.
work
So
for a
even-
company? It felt like an independent 3-man operation.
Okay. Yeah, okay. If it's not for a company, they're still like in a mechanized organization. They've still got conveyor belts and machinery and stuff like that. So it's still a capitalist business venture going on, making this dog food out of kangaroos. So in that way, it's attacking them as well. It obviously rips the TV away, which is a representation of society. So it's not just like, you know, when a lot of these films kind of, oh, it's the rich one comes to the rural area and everyone there is against them, because it's just nature attacking everyone from that area. It's kind of all humanity in all its various guises, and that way it's kind of more indiscriminate than other things you'd have, and it makes it more interesting that way.
Is there a slasher movie where someone advocates for slasher rights or ending the indiscriminate killing of slasher villains?
There should be.
Yeah, that's the new novel approach to slasher movies, is a slasher civil liberties union organization.
I mean, we've had like from the slasher POV before, but maybe slasher survival groups, or yes, or slasher rights. Yeah, maybe that's the next niche.
Yeah, because that, you know, by the way, there's the there's the cameraman at the beginning. I also thought was going to be a character in the movie. That looks like oh God, why am I forgetting his name? That looks like the dude that plays Ash from Evil Dead.
Bruce Campbell.
Thank you, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, who is this Bruce Campbell look-alike? And instead we get a Glenn Howerton, Paul Rudd look-alike. So, I will say he is the least interesting actor in the movie. I guess that's supposed to contrast, but he's really boring.
Yeah.
Very bland. They could have gotten or written the role better. I don't know. That might be my biggest criticism, is I don't care about that guy so much.
I don't care about the main guy I'm meant to care about.
Yeah, he's just kind of a bland Canadian guy making his way through the story.
Yeah, there's issues with it, and it's not 100%. There are moments where it does feel very point and shoot. There's a couple of shots where he's running after the guy from the canning factory, one of the brothers, and the music kind of drops away, and it's just kind of shoot, oh, pan that way, and then it shoots here. It's like looking around, and and it is very kind of low budget, and it you know, parts of it are low budget. This is Australian horror. It's not going to be masses and masses of dollars in the it's in the 80s as well. So it's not going to be the most polished thing ever, but what it does get right, it gets really right. And what it doesn't get right, it gets a little bit wrong.
For the most part, it won't bore you. So,
Well done. Good.
Yep.
And on the slasher front, I just remembered there isn't one advocating for slasher rights as such, but I think they are adapting the Final Girl support group at some point, which is a great book, where it's a load of survivors of versions of Halloween and Friday the 13th and Elm Street, and the main person survived Silent Night, Deadly Night, actually, and it's she was hung up on the antlers and survived like that. And everyone reckons that she's not a proper survivor girl because she didn't actually do anything. She just happened to live through it without actually fighting back and stuff like that. So it's a really fun one on the slashers. Yeah, I think this movie is actually more of a slasher than like a Jaws movie, personally.
Yeah.
With Razorback being, and you've even got the fact that there's stuff that happened in the past right at the beginning, and then you cut to the present day, which is the typical slasher trope that was going on around the time as well, and still is to this day, because you need to have like a Sins of the Father here. You've also got the epic stuff. I can see where they're getting the Jaws thing one, because there is a Ahab character, but in which case it's therefore Moby Dick. not necessarily Jaws. You're just reaching for the one that's closest to you rather than going back to the original trope.
Well, there's no point where he tells about like the boar trap. He just takes him aside and he's like, yeah, so let me tell you some boar information because I am a boar hunter.
Yep. There's what was it? There's just something about shooting the shit out of a razorback that makes me happy, or something along those lines, which is great. It's definitely much better than I had expected. And some of the surrealist, like Dali dream sequence, like matte paintings, especially with like the puppeteered kind of horse skeleton or kangaroo skeleton. It's like it's so nicely done and not expected. Like 35 minutes into the movie, this comes along and I'm like, I go, what?
So weird.
Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's definitely worth a look. So Night of the Lepus, don't bother. Jaws only if you're really Jaws 2 only if you're really curious. But this one, add it to your list.
And like we said, it's only 90 minutes, so it won't hog a lot of your time.
Yeah.
Ching. I would also say, I think I mentioned it before, but if anyone else is interested in this kind of stuff, then the documentary on Shudder, Sharksploitation, is very good. I think I reviewed it for the Film Magazine a while ago, about a year ago. So go check that out. It's really good and really fun. Nice.
Okay, well that is it for Animals Attack. I mean, this is something we could do again. There's so many animal movies.
We'll do modern ones, 21st century ones.
Yeah, instead of 70s and 80s. I thought somebody was going to pick something made after 1984, but I guess not.
We're going to do Black Sheep, and then he decided to do Night of the Lepus.
Yeah.
So it's Sam's fault. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Well, that's all right. But Sam will remedy that by picking a good movie, maybe. We'll see next week. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where I've got a top 10 best moments from Life of Brian up currently. So it's one of my favorite comedy films. It was fun to write that one. So check that out and see if you agree with my general ordering of things.
And hopefully you don't find me anywhere, but if you do, I'm K Judgmental in the various bits and pieces and places around the world. I think the only thing I've got up recently for the Film Magazine is a review of Alien Romulus, which came out on Friday, and obviously has been a big talking point in the film world recently.
Yeah, and reading it out loud convinced me to actually go see it instead of just staring at there's nothing out at my movie theater other than Romulus is taking up every screen. And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. Anything that I write is on the Film Magazine, but I didn't write anything. So I'll plug Margaret Rorty wrote 2 pieces, 10 Best Dirty Dancing Moments, which is about the movie, and 10 Best Heather's Moments, also about the movie, not just people named Heather.
Heather Graham.
Somebody called Heather doing some dirty dancing,
Yep. So go check those out, and obviously everything that we write and the video Joe is making for Alien Romulus out of Kieran's review.
Our editor Joe has also done a very interesting piece, again linked to Romulus, that's gone up today, I think, about the portrayal of one of the characters in the film and what it says about certain attitudes in society. It's a really interesting read.
That is Alien Romulus and how we don't want our disadvantaged loved ones to be fixed.
I was going to say it's an actual piece of criticism rather than ranked listicles and stuff like that and our BuzzFeed articles.
I mean, I've got an idea possibly for a much more kind of moany kind of piece about one aspect of Alien Romulus, but I'm not sure.
Is this about one of the characters by any chance?
Possibly, very possibly. I think you know what it would be about,
strange that.
Yeah. And certain trends in Hollywood.
Well,
they made the alien black, didn't they?
No, I would say for anyone that obviously will read Sam's article on that, even without knowing what it is, you have my sympathies.
And you can also find us at Second Cut Pod, or Second Cut Podcast somewhere. You can email secondcutpod@gmail.com. And then, of course, the Redbubble and PayPal down below if you want to support the film magazine. Give us money, or give us money in exchange for goods and or services.
Support our capitalist societies.
Yes.
Hey, you went for the Medlier as well.
I did, yes.
Yes, but
My hoodie is here somewhere.
we have a very equitable distribution system at the film magazine, so we're seizing the means of film stuff production,
Sure.
film criticism production,
What he said.
and that's it, I guess. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't like. Interact with this. That is it.
Yeah, that.
Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.